All right, let's talk about what are the most innovative incentives, compensation ideas, or perks that employers are using to strengthen their work teams. This is the reality of the workplace today. In the advent of places like Google that have come up with very creative ways to engage their employees. I read a book about 2 years ago called Chief Joy Officer. The guy, so instead of calling himself the CEO, he calls himself the CJO because he believes that the top leader in an organization is responsible specifically for whether or not the employees find joy in their work. So they create creative benefits and things like that that make it better for employees to be able to work somewhere. So you don't have to give me the long version, you can give me the short version, but I know you all wrote these up. If you didn't get it done, just say pass, but why don't you give me just kind of a quick rundown, maybe of something you found interesting about this topic, like something you uncovered in your research that an interesting incentive, an interesting perk, a company that's doing it well, some kind of statistic that stood out to you, whatever. So Max, you want to go first?
Sure. One of the articles that I found talked about BMW and some of the policies that they're putting in effect for some of their employees. One of which was reducing hours per week, giving additional leave days, offering early retirement, and furthering education. And while some of those things kind of seem counterproductive, like reducing the number of hours per week, that would seem like it would be going against their bottom line. They actually found that it said that they claim it will improve their short-term earnings as well as allow for innovation in the future. I'm just rereading. It's been a while since I read over this. And then in the separate article that I found, talked about they had 5 different categories: purpose, social, financial, community, and physical categories of well-being. And when 4 out of the 5 of those were met, they would miss 70% fewer days to poor health. So if they weren't feeling well, they would still come in, rather than just kind of saying, "Oh, I won't come in today." So if they found well-being in 4 of those 5, then they were much more likely to be committed to the company. So
interesting. Yeah, back to the number of hours, it does sound counterintuitive for a factory basically to require less work hours, but America is, of all industrialized countries, or Western industrialized countries, America is like, I think, the highest number of hours per work week for employees. And so many European countries are at 10%, like 36 hours a week or something like that, less. I think Finland is like 4-day work weeks, things like that. And I think more and more companies are looking at it. I don't know if companies are transitioning to it because it's hard to put your money where your mouth is. If you can create $1 million worth of revenue for every hour your company is on duty, then, how do you cut back, a significant amount of time, but the hidden costs and things like that, the hidden paycheck of making creative benefits, I think it's making it worse for some companies. So in Japan, they came up with like a total quality management system years ago. In Japan, automakers, because of like the long commute for a lot of workers, they had 16-hour work days, but there were 2 or 3 breaks, an hour lunch where you could go. They have bowling alley, swimming pool, gym. This is before companies had like gyms on site. Now it's a more popular thing. Sleeping pods, full cafeteria. So they made it where, because someone's commuting in a whole hour on the subway, so they're going to actually work more hours. They're going to work like 12 hours, but they're also going to get multiple breaks. They can take a nap. They can do all these different things. And so Japanese auto manufacturing went way up because of satisfaction of their employees. When they're there, they're really there. In Japanese culture, when they get home, it's not quite like American culture sometimes. So So they were able to kind of tolerate that. Those 70s and 80s for Japan. So read some stuff about that. All right, Joe, what you got?
I don't think I found anything super interesting. There are articles, I don't remember very many of them, but what I
Just give me
wrote
a
was,
takeaway. You don't have to give the whole.
it's hard, sometimes it's hard to get like team goals or team incentives after hitting goals, because a lot of times, in some of the articles I read, they said there's a lot of problems with people that like one person wouldn't help at all and then other people would, and then it would end up that like they'd hit the goal, but some people don't have to work as hard.
Yeah.
So
Like a class project that happens, where it's like, you got some people are just going to gravitate towards doing it all, and other people are going to gravitate towards letting them do it all.
right. So they were just suggesting that you have to monitor it better, I guess, and like see what work people are putting in, so that you want to reward the whole team as a whole. They hit goals, but you also you can't reward people that are not doing anything. You do want to reward people that are doing more.
It's when we're sitting here talking about what could be done, we talk about like things very, very idealistic. Like, wouldn't it be awesome if you could give, like in the last class, someone mentioned, Google offered 16 or 18 weeks of maternity leave. Wouldn't it be awesome if you could do that? That's what I would do if I ran a company. But then you come to work at Faith Baptist Bible College and you have to make like real world decisions. Like, we have to hire another full-time professor for 16 weeks or more. How do we do that? So we have the ideals that we talk about in here, and then you have the reality that you get out there and you're like, how do you actually make that work? Can you actually do some of these ideal things, or do you have to kind of find a happy medium so that you don't have, it looks good on paper, but the reality is you got some people that are totally taking advantage of it, whatever. Alyssa, what you got?
One of the article that I read, the president of this specific company, he basically created a specific meeting time for the team or the employees or whatever to come together twice a month to basically just talk about ways that they can improve and what's going on, like with whatever project they're working on at the time, or just how work's going basically. And I thought it was just really interesting the way that like this chapter talked about kind of how with the team building cycle, like it kind of starts with the problem and then goes from there. This kind of, the way he's doing it, it almost sets you up to not have to start with the problem, but you're just kind of, he's creating an environment where they're being open about it, so they're not going to be worried about saying, hey, I'm concerned about this, or I don't like this over here. He's specifically creating something so that you're not starting with the problem, you're just kind of working through them as they come up. But I thought it was cool because each meeting was divided into 15-minute segments. Like the first one was just 15 minutes of, like, here, I have this thought over here, I noticed this over here, and I think this is a problem. And then another segment was like the learning time. So I thought it was interesting. They're kind of doing what we do in these classes, where they like look at examples of leadership and look at just kind of they're teaching their teams how to be good leaders. And then they also took time to kind of work on problems or work on ideas and kind of mull over them. So I just thought it was like an interesting idea to kind of start with just having specific times to talk about problems or concerns, so you're not like frantically trying to bring people together to fix them as they come up.
That's good. As part of being, we'll read about this, different leadership books talk about it, of being what's called a learning organization. You're constantly open to learning something new, solving problems as they come up, not waiting until they build up to something huge, having regular opportunities for feedback so that feedback becomes a natural thing. That's a learning organization. They're constantly receiving this loop of feedback versus, it takes some humility for a leader to say, hey, we're going to stop everything twice a month for an hour at a time, and we're going to talk about stuff. A lot of leaders wouldn't have to do that. It does take a certain amount of humility and take some intentionality. Katie, what you got?
So for my examples of incentives, I have the same article Max had. But something else I found, I guess that's interesting, is like, his name's Jerry Tomasako. He's like a Japanese business consultant guy. He said that the driving forces behind incentive programs are like long-term improvements in profitability, productivity, and customer service, and then to decrease employee turnover. So I think that's kind of interesting because normally when employees like do their job, they get their paycheck. That's just something expected. But if you want to improve your job or improve how they're doing everything, then you need to offer something more and then build off on that, you know, to improve your current process. You can't just expect them to get better and just pay them the same. You gotta offer an incentive, either a raise or something else extra to increase that.
You know, ministries sometimes have a hard time with that. Not that they don't care about their employees. Most ministries probably feel like they care about their employees more than a secular organization. But they have limited resources. And so they're like, well, we can't give everyone a pay raise every year. What do we do? And it takes someone with creativity to say, well, there's got to be other things we can do that show our employees that we care, but there's not necessarily as much of a cash value. And so maybe that's, you know, thank you dinners. Maybe that's, you know, discounts on, you know, like a college. Hey, if you're a full-time employee here and you're a faculty member, your kids get to go for free tuition. That's a pretty good deal. You know, that's a way, it's a cash-free way of, you know, to help someone. And so, but sometimes ministries have a hard time being creative. You know, they kind of get stuck in a rut a little bit. And ministries sometimes sadly fall back on the, well, if you love Jesus, you'll just do this anyway. And you know, that's kind of true, but on the other hand, it's like it would sure be nice if someone cared too. So something that we can all, you know, hopefully we're in places where that's not the case, but if it is the case, we can make a difference by stepping in and trying to be creative and offer that positive creativity. So great. Okay. Well, I just realized since we are missing like 5 people or 4 people, we shouldn't have a full class period because they would have each presented, right? So we're going to shorten this down to, I'm going to spend 5 minutes on the chapter. Then the people that aren't here, I'm going to have them each submit a short video and you just have to watch through it real quick, but just like a 1-minute video of what you guys just did, they can do the same thing. So they'll post a video to the discussion. You can just do a like, you guys will be done. Let's talk about the chapter real quick. So the chapter was not as accessible. I mean, I teach this stuff and the chapter wasn't that interesting to me, honestly, just to be totally honest. The chapter had some good stuff in it, but it also had some stuff that's very specialized, like if you were already in some kind of corporate team that's having a problem and you're dealing with change management. So I don't blame you if this chapter wasn't like your favorite thing ever. But let's focus on which I encourage you to always try to find something that you can get out of it. So this little list right here is good. This common problems found in teams. This is sports teams, business teams, cross-functional teams, failure to achieve team goals, reduction in productivity, unexplained increase in costs, increase in grievances or complaints from team members, complaints from clients about quality of the product or service, conflict among team members, confusion about assignments, lack of broad team support for decisions, decisions not carried out properly, lack of follow-through, apathy, general lack of interest, lack of initiative, imagination, or innovation, ineffective meetings, problems with team leaders, like a high dependence on or negative reactions to the team leader, or poor communication. Every team is susceptible to every one of these things. And so you're gonna have these things happen. It's just like in a family, you're gonna have conflict, you're gonna have things that don't always work out right. It's recognizing that you have the potential of every one of these things happen and then being intentional about having some kind of system in place where you realize this is happening and you do something about it, or watching out for it so you can avoid it. Those are kind of the two things. If it happens, what do we do? How do we keep some of this stuff from happening? Some things have to do with the personality of leaders. So some leaders are vague people. They're not real crystal clear communicators. So conflict might come from confusion about assignments. They might not do a real good job of saying, Jared does this, Katie does this, Alyssa does this. They might say, hey, maybe by the middle to end of next week, we need someone to maybe do this. And you're like, you walk out, did we just get an assignment or did we get fired? I'm not sure. So they might just be kind of vague people. And so their personality might affect this. What happens is you have to hopefully put people around you that have other giftedness to kind of fill in those gaps. So you might not be a real detailed person. You need to have a detailed person close to you that can kind of help make sure the details get out. That's why you have administrative assistants oftentimes have totally different skill set than whoever they're working under. So Bree Harrier, Jim Tillotson, different skill sets, right? So Bree would never get up and, speak publicly and be the spokesperson for things and sit in a question and answer session with faculty. But Dr. Jim would never be the one to put together the agenda and come up with detailed notes for the board meetings and, make sure all the logistics are taken care of. So that's why people get paired up like that. So anyway, this chapter wasn't super impacting. The next chapter is actually a lot more interesting, by the way. So I really won't spend much more time on this. We actually touch on, I think, every single one of these things at some point in one of our classes. We try to talk about ineffective meetings and, communication and talking about, the finances of business. We talk about team goals, things like that. So we'll cover all this. So I think I'm going to land the plane right now. All you'll have to do is in the discussion, I'll post the video of this, and then I'm going to ask your classmates to post short videos, just watch their videos. And I'm going to ask them to keep it to like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, so that you have to spend a ton of time on it. And then that gives us a nice full class period. Monday, just be looking for assignments. The last thing, so this class has not been quite as strong as I wanted it to be. Me getting sick, us trying to do like 2 remote days and 1 actually in-person day is not quite turned out the way I wanted to. I'm a little behind, I feel like, on the assignments. I know you guys probably don't mind so much having a light load. We do have this book, which this is a great book, by the way. It's if you get the audiobook version, you'll be totally entertained by it. It's really a good story. But there's even, if you're savvy, you could go to TED Talks, and there's a short TED Talk version I think we watched in our project management class that kind of gives the punchline of this whole book. You could watch that, and that'll give you the different topics. Somehow, some way, we're going to need to all read and do something with the principles in this book. What I'm thinking about doing is putting it out to everyone on discussion. What's the best way to do that? You want to do straight up book reports? You want to break down the 4 different qualities of ideal team players and